Randomly, I was thinking about video game icebreaker questions, and these are usually questions that people ask each other that are like video games. People like video games ask each other these questions in order to get to know each other. And one of the questions I always love is, what video game world would you like to live in? And this is an interesting question because people always go, I'd love to live in Final Fantasy, or I'd love to live in the Yakuza world. And to me, it's like, man, if I lived in Final Fantasy, I would be destroyed. I would be one of the people on the ground as the bad guy towers over us and kills us. That would be me. I'd be the person on the ground. Same way Yakuza, I'd be the guy that's randomly beaten up or hit with a bike. That's me. So I was thinking, what's the best answer you could ask that's the safest answer? And that is The Sims. I really feel like Sims is the only answer I could really think of, because at least we can all be unhappy like we are now in the world, but we can blame it on the person who's playing the game. We can blame it on that teenager who booted up the game but then left to go get a drink with their homies. We can blame it on the adult who wanted to go back and play Sims, booted up, then forgot it was logged in. You know? We can blame it on them. Oh, I peed on the floor. Well, it wasn't me. Someone should have built the toilet. Max, you should have built the toilet. Oh, I burned my breakfast. Well, you should have built up my cooking skill, Regina. Oh, my husband moved out. Regina, please bring back my husband. Please log into Sims and bring back my husband. Regina, please. I am very lonely. Regina.
Your soul. Oh, please. In this day and age, if I do have an agenda, it's that you survive.
Welcome to Roaming Recess. This is a show where I talk about video games, whether it be reviewing the current Let's Play we're playing at certain points, or it's just talking about video games in general. Surprisingly enough, this is going to be a video game show. And today I wanted to talk about all the games that I've played this year, both off and on the channel, and just give them a rating out of 10. Now, the rating system goes 1 to 9, which is pretty much, standard. Then 10, which is like best in class, not perfect. Then chunky. The chunky rating is given to a game that I deem to be like nearly flawless. So that's how the rating system works. In my mind, 5 is like average, right? 6 is above average. 7 is well above average. 8 is really good. 9 is great. 10 is absolutely superb, best in class. You know what I mean? That's the way I go with the ratings. And chunky is like, man, this I'd have to look for flaws. And I don't want to look for flaws in games. That doesn't sound fun. So let's just go through a list of games that I like this year. You can tell me if you played any of them, and if you haven't played them, tell me the games that you played as well. I'd actually like to hear about it. First up, we have Lost Odyssey. This is a game that I've wanted to play for years. It is a game that I played as a kid, but believe it or not, when I bought it secondhand in the store, it came with only 3 discs. It's a 4-disc game. How could that even happen? I guess how it happened was a lot of bad GameStop employees, no offense, didn't check for the 4th disc. But then again, it was probably very difficult to know how many discs were supposed to be in the game unless they had it on the cover of the game. I totally understand that. But this game is a Xbox exclusive. It was one of those times where Xbox was trying to get more JRPGs on the system because they saw that the PlayStation 3 was not only catching up, but the PlayStation 3 was like getting more and more games from Japan. And you look at the library of the PlayStation 3 now, it is like stacked with JRPGs. It is a JRPG machine, and I guarantee you, if you don't think that, please go back to the system and just check out all the JRPGs that are on the PS3. You'll be actually shocked how many great JRPGs there were. And Lost Odyssey came out at a time where Xbox was considered kind of like the console for shooters. It was the shooter console, but it was also the console that like everyone had. Like everyone had that console. I was Xbox 360 up to a certain point. Then when Skyrim came out around that time, I think I got a PlayStation 3, or was it Shadow of the Colossus that re-released, and I got a PlayStation 3 for that. So I kind of switched over sides, and I've been back with like kind of like PlayStation. Even though I have an Xbox now, I'd say my main console was like PlayStation/Nintendo for a very long time. This is a really good game. It's a really good game about friendship and love and happiness, but it's also just like a really cool battle system with some pretty cool party members. Kaim, Seth, Jansen, Ming, Cook, Mac, all a bunch of characters that I absolutely adore, especially Kaim. I love Kaim's story. I love how they really made a story about like immortals not seem cheesy, because it can get very cheesy sometimes when you talk about people who can never die. Great battle system, some really fun boss battles. The grinding is actually not grinding because it's actually all really fun. Characters learning abilities is really, really rewarding. And the music in this game is absolutely fantastic too. This is just a really well done game. It reminds you a lot of Final Fantasy X in a way. And I'm going to give this game a 9 out of 10. The reason why we're not going to give it the 10 out of 10 or the chunky rating is literally just because it has some dated aspects. I know it's kind of unfair, but that's just the way things go. I really think though it holds up incredibly well to give it that 9 out of 10. Saints Row. This game is unbelievably weirdly dated, and I know the word dated is going to come up a bit in this, but and it's kind of unfair. But I think in a way that this doesn't hold up as well as I thought it would. When I booted up this game, I got a lot of memories from being a child and playing this game for the first time. I think I played this game for the first time when I was like maybe 12 years old, maybe 11 years old, whatever. And it was really, really fun as a kid. But I think a lot of the stuff that like I thought was super serious as a kid isn't as super serious now, because as a kid, like, this story about gangs and stuff, it was a whole world that I didn't know, obviously. So, you have really iconic characters like Johnny Gat coming into this, and Julius, and your main character as well. It still has like the bones of like a really good game in this, a really good game. And that's why like I really feel like this is not going to be as lowly rated as maybe it should be. I think that there's some really tedious aspects to it, like having to do a bunch of side missions to get over and do the main missions. That doesn't really happen nowadays. But I understand what they were going for. They were trying to like make you control the entire city of Stillwater. Stillwater is really good to explore, by the way. It's a really good world. They have so many shops you can go into, so many different locations. You get used to the world so much that you can just travel around naturally, which I think is a really good thing. Sometimes worlds are too big to actually understand like where everything is at times. And I think it's a really good thing that you were able to like learn the pattern of the world and how to drive around and find all the places. Shooting is still pretty good. Like, it's still pretty good in this game. But yeah, I feel like the story isn't as impactful as I thought it was as a kid, but it's still pretty good at times. The pacing is way too weird. It's too fast. It's like our best friend just passed away in this game, and we're already like next mission. We're like, let's go. Or even later on, we just go, let's go. It's also like really weird, the tone of this game when like, you have this really sad moment that is legitimately sad when like someone passes away, and then you have like past mission respect plus 30, and you're like, oh my god. Like, that's so weird. I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. It holds up at times and doesn't hold up at other times. Last of Us Part 2 remastered for the PlayStation 5. I got this game for $10. This was just a tenner, which is actually really, really good. I know this game is kind of controversial for many reasons, and a lot of people will probably have their own opinions on this. For me personally, I really like this game a lot. It's one of the few games, believe it or not, like that I play that like is of this style. I'm not a big fan of like games where you have to go around sneaking people and like crafting stuff. But I just love the way that this game kind of feels like a full-on like explorable world. It's so much fun exploring, and like the story is like good, but like I feel like the main reason why I would go back to a game like this is because like I love the encounters. I love like having to like explore different like a coffee shop and wonder who's going to be in the the back area. I'm gonna have to worry about 3 zombies or 4 zombies. It kind of gets exciting. Now, the only thing that I would say about this game, the reason why like I would never rate it a chunky or a 10 or anything like this, is because I feel like the ending still has issues. Like, I think it's not as bad as I remember it was, but like I think the last 3 hours of this game really like fall apart for me sometimes. I really feel like the game should have ended 3 hours before it should have. And I totally get that, like, you want to tell a story, and the director of this game and the writer of the game definitely wanted to tell his own story, and that's perfectly fine. But I think at some points, even if you are a famous director, someone should probably step in and be like, hey, your game is superb to this point. And, and it's not just me who said this. This was a common, like gripe with the game. Everyone's like, the last 3 hours, like, just drag down the game just a tiny bit. But I really still feel like this game is really fun. I think that they made hand-to-hand combat with zombies very fun. So I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed replaying this game. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This is a game about forgiveness. This is a game that is a part of a franchise that I already love, so there is some biases going into this that I probably would have to acknowledge. I loved playing as Ichiban Kasuga. I loved playing as Kazuma Kiryu. I was one of the people that doubted the idea of bringing back Kiryu because I thought that Ichiban should have his own game and his own series going forward, which is probably what's going to happen anyway. Ichiban is probably one of the best things to happen to that franchise. While Kazuma Kiryu is literally one of the greatest protagonists of all time, maybe the greatest if we're counting it. Like, he has such a fantastic story from all the way from Yakuza to Yakuza 0 to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and even parts of 7 and now 8 as well. Like, he has, and Gaiden as well. He has such a fantastic story that, yes, I do believe that any send-off they have for him, I will trust it completely. And there's so much trust to have in this franchise because they still make great stories, they still make great combat systems. Exploring Hawaii in this game is really good. One of the cool things about this game is that they actually got Hawaii actually very right. Not in terms of just like, oh, like food and shops and things like that, and clothing. I was talking to like a native Hawaiian, And they were saying to me that, yeah, a lot of the political stuff was right in the game. A lot of the stuff about, like, how the environment is treated in Hawaii by other countries is exactly right. And I was like, that's so impressive that they spent time doing this. They spent time talking about this stuff. A lot of incredible twists in this game. The twists in this game actually make sense, and they, like... That's what's always so good about Yakuza, is because you'll have a twist happen, and it goes, oh my god, I didn't see that coming, but also at the same time, I did see it coming, but also at the same time, it makes perfect sense. You can look back at all the signs and go, yeah, that makes sense now. That makes perfect sense. I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. And the reason I'm not giving it a 10 out of 10, it's only a 9 out of 10, is probably because I do feel as though the story wasn't as good as the last game, and maybe it wasn't as concise. I think that, you know, making a bigger game sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot. Making a bigger game sometimes means that the story gets left aside sometimes. And, you know, when you spend 5 hours on side content, people will be like, that's your fault, you did that pacing. And it's 100% true, but I'm talking about my experience. I'm kind of rating my experience with the game more than the game itself in some ways. I still think it's an absolutely amazing game. You know, it's one of the most incredible games I've ever played. It deserves to be up there for sure. Persona 3 Reload. Everyone was waiting for this game. This is a game that I saw on my timeline going crazy for. Anyone who's played like the Persona games knows that like this was a long time coming, and mostly just because Persona 3 is one of those games that everyone says is the best story, but the gameplay kind of lacks when you go back to it. Now, I don't think it lacks as much as I remember. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. But what I would say is that Tartarus was always very kind of irritating in some ways, because it's one of those dungeons where like, I usually spend 2 hours at a time in it, which is my own fault. But then the 2 hours you spend in there, it's like your characters would get tired, your characters would get weak, you wouldn't have much in the way of like defending yourself after a while, and it gets kind of like tedious in that aspect. But they did kind of fix that in a way. The battles are way more streamlined, they're way more fun in this game, characters are way more fun to use, there's new abilities that you can make to speed up the combat. So there was like a lot of like really new fun aspects to it. They made Tartarus actually look better as well, which is a big deal. Really, like, I was worried about the voice acting in this game, but I think a lot of the voice actors did a really fantastic job. Fuka is a whole different character, breathes new life into her. People talk about like Yuko. Yuko is a new character completely in a good way. Like, everyone loves Yuko now because she's such a natural voice actor, and I think there is a difference. Because you're talking about a lot of the people who are voice acting for Persona 3 now are big fans of Persona 3. So they wanted to do it right. And there's nothing wrong with the original voice acting. I'm not going to say that like I love that game still, the original game. But I really feel like the new voice cast not only did it justice, but like did a lot of the story aspects justice too. They also like just like, because it was a PlayStation 2 game, the original game, a lot of the stuff I imagined in my mind about Persona wasn't actually there happening on the screen. It was like, you know, these 2D figures with like these sprites coming up on the screen. And I had to imagine in my head, like, this is what it looks like to me in my head. But that wasn't the case at all. Like, it was, you were just imagining like what it would look like in the real world, or what it would look like if it had a big magic cutscene. And what's crazy about it is that in this game, multiple times throughout the game in the big story aspects, they like really got what I was picturing in my head. They really understood what I was picturing in my head. Of course, the music in this game is awesome. The new Hangouts with the Boys is awesome too. I think the game just looks absolutely gorgeous. I think it's so fun to move around this world a lot. Yeah, and I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. Again, Tartarus is still not great, but you know what? Who cares? It's a really fun game. If I had to rank my favorite Persona games, which I get asked quite a bit, I would do number 1 is probably Persona 4 still. Then I think, actually, I believe it or not, Persona 3 Reload, Persona 5 Royal, Persona 2, Persona 1, and that's just the mainline games. That's, you know, if we got into the other games, we'd be here forever. Undertale Yellow. I made no secret about this game being like a game that like I loved to death, but also at the same time had a few issues with. The story in this game is impeccable. It's incredible. You wouldn't even know it was a fan-made game. I think nowadays we have to just comprehend the idea that like fans are good writers. You look at fan fiction, which I don't look at fan fiction quite a bit, but people want me to with some series, and they actually are just really talented writers. And you will find that most TV writers now and movie writers would probably have been writing fan fiction when they were kids. Because like, well, that's what fan fiction is. A lot of people do write like, even people are like, I don't get fan fiction. It's like, man, you used to write like South Park comedy scripts that you thought you were going to get work on South Park. You know, you thought you were doing that. A lot of us did that. Like, I used to write like scripts for like The Simpsons because like, and that's fan fiction, whether we like it or not. That's fan fiction, regardless of anything of that. It's a really good game. The locations are beautiful. The new kind of systems when it comes to like, I think they really made armor mean something. They made characters that like I would just think would be in Undertale and Deltarune already. Like they weren't characters where I'm like they were out of place. You could put them in the Undertale and Deltarune world and they would just work there. The problems I had with the game, I really felt as though a lot of the combat didn't change the battles as much in this game. And also like the spare mechanic wasn't as like, I don't know, important in terms of like, hey, you know, we were going to figure out how to spare this character. I didn't feel like it was as intuitive in my opinion. The combat's also super hard, but I'm not going to mark that down because of it. Because I feel like that'd be very silly because that was really just a talent aspect, a skill aspect that I'm not very good at. And I wasn't good at the game, so then what can I say? We will give this game a 8.5 out of 10. The only reason I'm docking it to the 2.5 is literally, or the 1.5 is legit just because I, because of the small gripes I had. That's it. That's literally it. Danganronpa V3. This is a game I played on the channel. To me, it had one of the most perfect endings to a video game. I absolutely loved it. I loved the little twists and turns in this game. The characters in this game mean so much to me. I have a full Let's Play about this, and I'm going to say that this game is chunky. This is the first chunky game of the list. It is a chunky game. It is a game that doesn't really have a hair out of place, and every single aspect of it I really adored. There we go. It's a chunky game. Silent Hill: The Short Message. This is an interesting game to even like put on the list because it is a free game. You can get it right now on the PlayStation. I think it is. It's a PlayStation game you can get right now. But it's also a really heavy topic that deals with a lot of like really heavy subject matter. So obviously like, they give you a warning at the start of the game. So I'll also have a Let's Play of it or a playthrough of it, a full playthrough of the game in the description below if you want to check that out. Regardless. It is a really heavy game, but I actually thought that they did the chase mechanics very well because I think chase mechanics in horror games are really tired, and I actually thought they did a really good job with this. They made it actually kind of scary. The locations you explore in this world are really cool. They really did a seamless FMV. I think it's such a flex for a game company to do a seamless FMV when we were just saying that Alan Wake was one of the only games that actually able to do it and to do it right, and now they did a seamless FMV in this game too. It deals with heavy subject matter, which is why I'm unrating this game. I don't want to rate this game. I will say that like, it's incredible. It's one of my favorite games of the year so far, but I don't feel right rating it just because it's a subject matter, because I feel like it's kind of like gaudy to be like, I'm giving this game a 9 out of 10, because it is just it's a great game. It's a great game that deals with a lot of very important subject matter. And it's kind of funny because people were like talking about this stuff online and they're making fun of some of the aspects of it. Like, they're like, oh, one of the insults the guy does is he called the girl smelly. And like, people are laughing at this as if like, small insults don't make a big difference. You know what I mean? Have you ever, like, we remember what it was like being in school, and like if a guy in front of a bunch of other guys called a girl smelly, that would affect them so much. And you're like, people probably like, yeah, but it's smelly, it's so funny. It's like, that's how you know, like, you know, thankfully that these people weren't like insulted in school, because the smallest of insults can have the biggest impact, and I think people forget that. Dead Space. This game is getting an 8 out of 10. I think the only reason why it's not going to get the 10 out of 10 or the 9 out of 10 for me is literally just because like it's a remake of an older game, so obviously it still has some pacing issues, but the pacing issues like really, you know, aren't the fault of the remake, I guess. But this is my first time playing it, so I'm rating it as like a first time game. I feel like the monsters in this game become less and less scary. If that was intentional, then I'll bump up the rating. I literally will. If you guys feel like that was intentional, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. They become less and less scary as the game goes on, which is something that like I'm not always a big fan of. I think that like one of the things that you need to do if you have a horror enemy or a villain in a game or a monster in a game, you need to make them, you know, scary throughout. And one of the things you do is you don't send them out after the player as much, or you make your game shorter. That's why survival horror games sometimes are very much shorter. You look at the most iconic, and this is unfair to compare this, the most iconic horror villains of all time. You look at like Pyramid Head, or you look at Mr. X, or you look at the Shibito in Siren Blood Curse. You look at like these enemies that are like really iconic now, and even like instantly iconic enemies like, you know, Lady Dimitrescu in Resident Evil 8. One of the things that they always should do, and I'm going to give an example of what you should do as well, in my opinion, is they trickle out the enemy over a while, and so you don't see them all the time. When you do see them, it's absolutely terrifying. Now, the good aspects of this game is beautiful. This game has some of the best music and atmosphere you ever have in a video game. This game looks amazing. This game with headphones on is one of the most terrifying things I've ever played. The gun crafting system is so satisfying. Shooting the guns, the rippers, and all these weapons is so satisfying. The boss battles are actually super fun. The way they crafted this world is actually really interesting too, because like you want to learn more about it, which makes me want to play the sequels. I hope they remake Dead Space 2 and 3, even though you can get Dead Space 2 and 3 on the Xbox as well. And also, there's a fan of mine and a subscriber of mine who worked on those games. And I've talked to them about it, and I've talked about how like I really think it's a really good remake. And so I appreciate them getting in touch with me on that as well, because I actually really did like this. 8 out of 10, for sure. A big 8 out of 10. And the last one, Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn. It gets chunky. The Tales of series is the most underrated RPG series. It should be up there with the Persona series and the Final Fantasy series. Legit. It's an incredible franchise. Now, the big three in JRPGs now is Persona, Final Fantasy, and Like a Dragon. This is not me just saying because they're some of my favorite franchises. In terms of sales, we're talking about in terms of sales. Now, the big three doesn't always have to be in terms of sales. It can be like iconic as well. And if you're talking about the iconic big three, it's Final Fantasy, Persona, Dragon Quest. That is the three most iconic JRPG franchises now in the world. Regardless of like what we want to think, and I love Dragon Quest as well, but like Tales of is underrated as heck, and this story was just a really cool addition to the game. It was a really nice goodbye for the characters as well. I think they really put them in a place where like you could really see them shine as like these people, these real people, and seeing them after all the stuff that happened, seeing what they go through, it just felt like putting on a glove. It felt like putting on a glove that you've worn before. It feels like putting on a hat that you've worn before, or like the best way I can describe it is it was like a warm blanket. It felt like a warm blanket, and that's why this is getting a chunky, because there's no hair out of place with this. The combat's really good. The game is really pretty. This is a chunky game. This is a chunky game. I did also play Genshin. We're playing Genshin right now on the channel. Just like legit, like right now that game is chunky. I don't want to give it any more rating officially though, because we're far out. We're far out from even touching the surface of all of the game. Who knows? I could end up hating it. Could you imagine that? Would that be crazy? But those are my ratings for this game. Really, like, or these games that I played this year. Really, this is just like a fantastic group of games. I really feel like, and this year I've regrown my connection with video games. And I talked about this before, but I definitely lost my connection with video games. Which is back now. It is back. I really feel like I have returned with my connection with video games, and I'm so happy to have that connection once again with video games. And when I say I lost my connection with video games, I just meant that I really did not have the same love for video games that I had last year, that I had every other year. Even though there's some really great video games that came out, like Tears of the Kingdom and Alan Wake, it was more just like on an emotional basis. And now I really feel like I'm back. I'm crying over video games again. I'm feeling all these emotions. Yeah. Let's go on to the questions or statements about the topic or any other topic. Bokoblin asked or said, feel free to not include this if you don't know what I'm talking about or would rather not discuss the topic, but do you think if they ever remake Persona 4 in a similar fashion to Persona 3, they include some of the scrapped Yosuke romance options from the base game? I think there's a good chance considering the public opinion on LGBT rep compared to back then. Things have changed 100%, and the video game community has changed. Yosuke was definitely like a product of the time, the way he kind of like makes fun of like his friend for being clearly bisexual in a way. And I think the reason why he does that is legit just because at the time that was such a normal thing for teenagers to make fun of like a friend, like, or something like that. Like it was like, as a teenager who was a teenager at the same time Yosuke was a teenager, such a common thing. Not something that I would do, but I mean it was so prevalent. I think you guys, anyone who was around at the time knows it was common. I think it's probably still common. Maybe it's not common now, but I really felt like it was common when I was a teenager. I don't know if they'll include this stuff. I think, can I be honest with you? I think not. I think video game companies that have major franchises on their hands, whether it be Final Fantasy, whether it be Persona, whether it be any of these games, I really feel like, you know, while they have amazing stories and fantastic storylines and fantastic games and fantastic characters, sometimes they still play it safe when it comes to romances. Sometimes the romance is still like, you know, girl with blue eyes and guy who's a bit tortured. You know what I mean? That's what it is nowadays. That's literally what they do still. But we'll see. We'll see. Like, again, I wouldn't mind. It wouldn't bother me in the least. I don't think it'd bother anyone. It would actually be really kind of fun. Malcolm Condé. One of my favorite parts is Genshin, how the entire new regions / sections added to the map every 3 to 4 months are entirely for free, which is really cool. And they always feel so handcrafted and detailed. The most recent are being Shenyu Vale. In that vein, what is the most beautiful area you've ever encountered in Teyvat so far? You know what's crazy? I would say, we could say that going to Liyue Harbor and seeing the lights and going, oh my god, that was the most beautiful thing ever. I still think that the first tree where we met the Archon of the world, I really feel like that was like the first time that I really felt like, oh my god, this is like one of the most beautiful, gorgeous games ever. Like this is one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Like when you see Ventia, that tree in that area still to this day, I dropped down there recently in a video and I was like, oh my god, this is still the most gorgeous place I've ever seen. And I'm glad we're kind of out of Mondstadt, but at the same time, like there was never a desire to leave Mondstadt. And there still isn't. I'd love to go back to Mondstadt and clear up some other stuff, but it's still a beautiful place. But yeah, like this game is a gorgeous game. It's a game that's so sturdy. It's a game that works. It's a game that doesn't have frame drops. It's just a really good game. So I hope that answers the question very well. Dodo Dan asks, now that you've played almost all the 3D Mario games, which one is your favorite and why? Also, would you rank them, or is it just something, or is it just that getting just, sorry, I'm bad at reading, it's not Dodo Dan. Also, would you rank them, or is that just getting into semantics? Let's try and rank them. Number 1 is Super Mario Sunshine, for sure. Immaculate vibes. Number 2 is Odyssey. Incredible gameplay, the peak of Mario gameplay. Like, it is the most smooth Mario experience I've had with the 3D Mario games. Number 3, I would say it's probably Galaxy 1, and then it's Galaxy 2. And then Wonder. Like, as much as Wonder is a great game, Wonder is like a near perfect game in terms of controls and gameplay and all this stuff. But it's still not like what I look for or what I love about the other Mario games, which like you still have to have like kind of like a little tinge of like an unbelievable story, an unbelievable 3D world to explore. I really love this. I know it's 2.5D. And if we're talking about like the Paper Mario games, obviously they would get ranked way higher than any other Mario game in the franchise. But yeah, like I would put Sunshine as my favorite for sure. And it's literally just because, and people say it's because it's your first Mario platformer, and it's probably that's it. There's a lot of that to it, but I still love this game, and I think that it still is incredibly good. Thanks for the question, guys. Thank you for the questions. If you want to ask your own question, it's €3 and up on the Patreon if you want to ask a question, and I appreciate it very, very much. Really, like, this was just a fun video to talk about like video games that I played this year. Whether it's relevant or not to topics and discussions that we're having now, I still think that it's just a fun thing to do at this point in time. I want to thank the Can Never Pay the Baby Gangsta tier on Patreon, Tyfaro2, Jamie Bull, Johnny the Banana, Rachel S, The Ghost of Inazuma, Felicious Felix, George Candelaria, Eskun, Yuld, Radish, and Poke Girl. Thank you so much.